This is Spectator Spider-Man Annual 13, which is one of them annuals from 93 that introduced new characters. They all came with cards. I don't think I have shown one off before. This is the trading card featuring the new character, Nocturna, Mistress of the Night. You get details and stuff on the back. I quite like these cards, but sadly, I didn't have any of the ones that I would want other than this one here. I didn't have cards for any of the good characters from these annuals. I just reviewed the Steel Superman annual from the same year, the Bloodlines crossover, where DC did the same thing, but worse. I chose this because I think the new character is one of the most blood-tiesy of the new characters. She is fairly unimaginative and has a bland backstory. She only appears once after this, although she is in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon. This is written by DeMatteis, and he does tie it all in with some Spider-Man stories he's telling our in the main book. If you're wanting a proper deep comparison or contrast with the DC annuals, look elsewhere. You're probably not gonna get it here. Nocturna, she was a police, and she is mourning the loss of her friend and colleague. And I didn't get it in the fan fiction because it's pointless. But this character, she only appeared in one more story after this. But if they wanted, they could bring Nocturna back and reveal that she was a lesbian, and it would not in any way alter or hurt this story. She is mourning the loss of what I am saying was her lesbian lover. It was one of the people who was killed by Vermin Man, our in Spectator Spider-Man 178, the Within Children story. And yes, I did take a look. Here is Spectator Spider-Man 178 for the third flipping time on this channel. Let's look inside again, and on this page we see Vermin Man's victims, well, photographs of them. And that one there, the blonde one, I think that is what we are saying was Nocturna's lass. That's just a nice little detail. Maybe unintentional, but it works. Then we have got tarot cards. So it is an awful comic no matter what now. There's been a series of grisly murders going on, mutilations and that. Nocturna is interested because she is sure it's related to Vermin Man. This is after the storyline where Vermin Man was caught and cured. You will see him in a few pages' time actually. She is investigating these killings, and it turns out to be another of the people who Baron Zero and Toby Jones transformed into monsters like Vermin Man. They were performing experiments on a bunch of homeless people and runaways and stuff like that. And now Nocturna, she ends up being subjected to the same process, and she is mutated into this bat monster form. And we have spent the first 7 or 8 pages exclusively on this new character. This, to be honest, quite dull person. And I criticised the Steel Superman annual for doing the same thing. But I find out the way it is done here is much better. We set the woman up, we have ties to Spider-Man stories and to the wider Marvel universe. She is linked to Vermin Man, and she is linked to Baron Zero and Toby Jones. And all that, unlike Knifeblade and his boring family, that is truly something that you can sink your teeth into. I didn't think that Nocturna is a good character, I think she is fine at best. But straight off the bat, pun intended probably, I find her more appealing to read about than Knifeblade, and I didn't find this long setup to be a nightmare to get through. Even the little thing about her being a lesbian, something that I'm just throwing out as a possible reading. That alone gave Nocturna, or reading about her, a bit of intrigue and excitement. I'm reading it, wanting to know if they're going to say something that makes the idea unworkable, or if they're going to just offer more ammunition towards it. They do. Quite a lot of ammunition. And also, you know what? This character might not be that great. She might not have appeared in any major capacity after her second storyline. But I can think of at least 3 or 4 valid stories to tell with this character. If you asked us to think of a single idea of what to do with Knifeblade, I would have absolutely nothing. But I really do hate how this entire review so far is heavily angling towards me doing fan fiction shite. So here is Spider-Man, and he saved a bunch of the mutates from Baron Zero, and he took them to be cured. And this leads us to a scene where we see a cured Vermin Man. This is just sweet, this scene. All the victims, they love Spider-Man for saving them. And here Spider-Man asks Vermin Man how he is doing. I fucking love this. In 3 pages, they have shown Spider-Man is one of the best people in the world, and said more about his character than they ever said about the lead character in that Steel Superman one. And it's not even the case that I like the writer here and I didn't like the writer there. I like both of them. Jim DeMatteis here and Lewis Simons on Steel Superman. They are both great writers. Well, this is just miles better than the other. And keep in mind, I have already established this is not one of the best annuals from this year. Spider-Man, he is also hunting down the mutilation killer. He actually noted the similarities to Vermin Man as well. And he's just really happy to know that it isn't Vermin Man, and that Vermin Man seems to be properly cured, at least until crap editors like Tom Beevort just have him show up again as a baddie without explanation. Vermin Man, he is almost becoming like the channel mascot. Nocturna, haven't mentioned this yet, but one of her gimmicks is that she cannot actually speak. When she was transformed, she lost the ability to speak. That's a bit unique. We have a fairly obvious misunderstanding superhero fight where Spider-Man thinks that Nocturna, she must be the killer on the loose, and she cannot really talk to explain what is going on. So here is a fight between the two. Didn't start thinking that I am forgetting the important things though. There are tarot cards in this comic. Tarot cards. Nocturna, she returns to the warehouse where she was transformed, and she confronts the actual killer, the mutate that has been gunning around murdering peoples. If you like forced contrivances and deliberate symbolism, well, the killer suddenly has shape-shifty powers, and she transforms into Nocturna, well, her odd appearance when she was human. And Nocturna is about to kill her when Spider-Man shows up, and he thinks as before that Nocturna is the killer. By the way, there is another part of Nocturna. She's always drawn, she's wearing a nightie, and inside, like in the sleeves and that, it's like all cosmic and stuff. Like Kazar's cape. I'm not explaining it very well. Like down here, you can see it again. There's stars and that. It's never explained or acknowledged in the writing. But Nocturna, she has some empath powers, like how Vermin Man can control rats and bats and that. Well, Nocturna, she is able to elucidate what is happening, and Spider-Man twats the actual killer across the room. Then we have a classic Spider-Man type of bit where Nocturna, she's going to kill the monster, but Spider-Man lectures her about how she used to be a police and how she is better than that. And we finish with Nocturna rejecting the promise of a cure. She finally feels like she is free from life's various shackles in this new form. And then there's the tarot cards again. And after the main story, we have backup stories. And as was tradition for most of these 1993 Marvel annuals, the first one is a solo story featuring the new character. So this is Nocturna in a solo story. When I said she appears in one other story, I didn't mean this one. I mean she's in another story about a year or two later in Amazing Spider-Man. This is written by DeMatteis again, and I think all the backups in this are written by him. I'd say this is more to the flavour of Knife Blade than the main story was. We set Nocturna up as an avenging angel who lurks in the darkness and silently attacks muggers and rapists and that. Even though it is the same writer here, her personality seems to have changed. She's a lot more violent and brutal here, whereas in the main story she seemed to have a lot of restraint and compassion. She attempts to reconcile with her mother. Pretty simple character stuff. Then our next story is, for some reason, an American Crow story. I don't know why it's here. He's more of a Captain America character. I think he was in at most one issue of Spider-Man. But here is a story about him and the Golden Age Vision haunting him. And while you might think that I am more positive towards this than I was the Steel Superman annual, and I am, I think much of the same stuff is done much better here. Nocturna is a pretty lame character. She has a lot more in her than Knifeblade ever did. I think someone could come along and do a good story with Nocturna. I didn't think anyone could ever tell something good with Knifeblade. The deciding factor for me, though, is that this comic featured, as did the Steel Superman one, the use of tarot cards, which means that this comic is actually awful as well. So I have to be fair and rate it the same as I rated Steel Superman, and that is a 7 thumbs up.